So you're a real estate wholesaler and you're interested in what's called reverse wholesaling. And that's something that maybe you've heard of before, and maybe you did it a while back. If, back in my day, 10, 13 years ago when I got into this industry, that's primarily what we did. We build a buyer's list, we get their criteria, put that together, and then go hunt for the deal for them and then bring it back to them. It was very, very, very non-frequent that we would work hard on having to dispo deals because we would always get the deal after the buyer had told us what they're looking for. Now, this is something that we talk about on the podcast today with my good friend Chris Logan, who has kind of a process called virtual wholesaling made simple. Obviously, virtual wholesaling is one of those things that's not new, it's not fresh, it's not a new idea, but being able to pair that with that concept of virtual wholesaling with finding your buyer first, which is what we talk about on the episode today, can really be a juggernaut for you in implementing in your wholesaling business if it's something that you can take action on and implement very easily. This process does, in fact, make things a little bit more simple on the wholesaling side if you are wholesaling real estate, as opposed to trying to go, assign a deal for 30 days or 60 days or whatever your timetable is, and then finding a buyer for that. If you already have the buyer lined up, obviously it can be a very simple, easy, quick turnaround process after you found the deal. Maybe you're excellent at finding deals and you're just not great at dispo and not great at finding the buyer. This could be the way that you work through those issues for your business is find the buyer first and then go get the deal if you're excellent at, deal finding. So that's what we talk about today with Chris Logan. He's really an expert on this, and he has that process called Find Your Buyer First that we dig deep into. And he talks about the process of creating that system for you in your wholesaling business that really does make wholesaling a little bit simpler than, what it typically is. Even though wholesaling is simple, there's always a way to dilute it even more, but also maybe make it more profitable. So Chris has a Facebook group called Virtual Wholesaling Made Simple that we're going to have linked in the description in the show notes below. So make sure you do go check that out. And also he does in the episode give us a free gift, and it says text free gift, and he gives us the phone number and that sort of thing. Make sure you do take advantage of that. If this is something you've never done before, you've never worked on building your buyer's list, which I think is extremely crucial if you are a real estate investor in any way, shape, or form, then you're going to want to take advantage of that gift that he gives us at the end of the episode. So make sure you do take advantage. But without further ado, I have my good friend Chris Logan talking about this. Listen up. Even if this is something you've done before, or maybe it's something you've never thought about before, this is going to be a really, really good tactic for your wholesaling business. And yes, this podcast is about marketing, but we're talking about marketing to build your buyer's list. That's primarily what we're going to be talking about on this episode. So I'm excited about it. So here's my good friend and a fantastic, absolutely fantastic episode, Chris Logan. You guys strap in. All right, welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler, that you are listening to right now. And today, I've got my good friend, Chris Logan, with Virtual Wholesaling Made Simple. It's a great program that I'm excited to talk about quite a bit today, but there's a few topics that we're going to dive into that we've really not talked about on this podcast. It's probably been things that have been skimmed over a little bit over time, being, close to 200 episodes deep, but we're going to really dig deep into a couple of very interesting topics with Chris. But Chris, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you hopping on and spending some time with us.
Josh, thanks for having me on, man. Super pumped about the episode today, looking to get rocking and rolling and dropping some value for your audience here.
So you had a one-pager sent over, and I'm looking through it because, obviously I like to know about the guests and get the, what are the things that, Chris is really, really good at, knowledgeable in, and able to really talk about and expound on. And one of the things that really kind of, turned the light bulb on for me was, you have a line here that specifically says, make wholesaling easier with FYBF, which is find your buyer first. Now, here's the thing. I've been in the real estate investing space for 13 years, and I when I first got in, acquisitions and marketing wasn't motivated seller lead marketing. It was building buyers lists. It was finding the buyer first, and then what they call it today is reverse wholesaling. It's just that kind of stuff was popular back then. That was a very normal wholesaling business. So bringing that up to speed today, the kind of concept of it's probably different, but in a world where I'd say probably Chris, the last 5-6 years, people have been so focused on lead generation, motivated seller lead marketing, direct to seller marketing, and haven't built buyers lists, haven't built relationships from people that are actually going to, buy the house. Maybe they are wholesaling to fix and flippers or landlords or whatever, but, you have to constantly find that buyer. And in the past, it's been if you got the good deal and you got a good spread and it's easy to sell. But in a market where it's harder to sell, because the deals are slimmer and slimmer. This is kind of important. So what's the concept behind this? How did this kind of come about, when you're putting this program together?
Yeah, no, I love that. And first of all, like what you said there before, where it's like, if you have, like people have been told for a long time, do you have a good deal to sell itself? But the problem is most new wholesalers getting into the game, they have no idea what a good deal is, quote unquote. So how could it sell itself, right? Mm-hmm. And so they'll go through and they'll put all this time, energy, and effort and money investing in marketing to get these deals that they can't sell, right? And then they're like, shoot, man. And then they drop the deal, they get demotivated. And then from there, maybe they do a deal, maybe they don't, maybe they quit, who knows, right? Yeah. But there's a much better and a much easier way. So we came up with the FYBF method, very similar to reverse wholesaling, right? So basically, we're going after finding our buyers first. So we're talking with people who are looking to buy investment properties, right? We're finding out what they want. We are finding out the areas they want, the types of properties they want, areas they want to avoid. So that way we don't waste any time, energy, or effort in the wrong places, right? Then from there, once we have an idea of what they want, we go out and we just get what they want and bring it to them. And when we do that, wholesaling becomes so much easier, and you're not, getting caught wondering, how can I find a buyer? Because you've already took care of that on step one. So if wholesalers will just commit to that and they'll commit to finding their buyer first, they will make the business much easier, and it'll trim out a lot of those headaches that they usually go through.
All right. So the golden question is, how do we find these buyers? Obviously, there's got to be some marketing or some sales involved. Yeah. Obviously, relationship building is a big piece of it. What are some of the methods of actually getting, and I'm not talking, and I know the direction we want to go into. I'm not talking a buyer that's going to buy one deal from you. I'm talking about a buyer that's a lifetime, like they're going to buy 10, 12 properties a year from you. How do you find that type of person?
Yeah, that's where it's at. So there's a big, so a lot of people think that Facebook groups don't have real buyers in there, right? We've used Facebook groups to sell a ton of buyers, right? So one of the first methods that I'll share with people just getting into the business, and even if people are in the business for a long time and they've struggled to grow their buyers list, you want to listen to this one tip because it's going to help you out so much, and it's going to grow your buyers list really fast. You can sell deals, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to go to Facebook and do a search for real estate investor groups in your area. So if you're going to a new territory, right, we're virtual wholesalers, so we wholesale house from home anywhere in the country. So you would want to pick the territory you want to wholesale in, right? And you're going to type in real estate investors Facebook groups. And so then you're going to find groups, you're going to join all of them, right? And then what you want to do is you want to go in those groups where other wholesalers are selling deals, and you'll know they're selling deals because there's going to be literally a property for sale, and you're going to see a bunch of people commenting on that. So a ninja trick for you is to go to the comments section for everybody saying, I'm a buyer, I'm a buyer, I'm a buyer. And what you want to do is you want to send those people a DM, like reach out to them, comment on there so they know that you're sending them a message, because if they're not friends with you on Facebook, they probably won't see it. And then from there, what you want to find out is, are they still actively looking to buy, right? And if so, are they a wholesaler, realtor, or a cash buyer? So once you find out the type of buyer they are, right? Because everyone who says they're a buyer in Facebook groups isn't necessarily a buyer, but that doesn't mean they're not valuable, right? So you want to go ahead and add those people to your list, find out if they're a cash buyer, realtor, or wholesaler. And then you want to find out the areas that they're buying, get their email and phone number, and let them know that, you'll send the next property out to them as soon as you come across one in the area that matches what they're looking for. Now, there's 3 types of buyers, again, that you want to have on your list. See, when I first started, I was under the impression that you only want to have cash buyers on your list because they're the ones that buy the properties, right? But man, I left so much money on the table because I left off the other 2 types of buyers. So the other 2 types is wholesalers, right? When I first started, I thought that if I was a wholesaler, I couldn't work with another wholesaler, which was totally silly, right? And but wholesalers can bring buyers to the table that you'll never have access to. Maybe they have a friend, maybe they have a contractor that they know that all of a sudden is a new buyer is willing to pay top tier prices because he's brand new into the game, right? So they can bring buyers that you don't have access to. And then the third type of buyer is a realtor who brings cash buyers to the table. Realtors are amazing. A lot of people think that realtors hate wholesalers, but they don't. And the good ones know how to bring value, and a realtor can bring buyers that you'll never have access to. I've had realtors bring buyers that have buyers that are out of the country. I would never talk to these people, right? They don't need the margins that the flippers do because they're buying to save on taxes, right? So there's a lot of buyers there that you don't have access to unless you have a realtor on your list. So make sure you have those 3 on your list, and you're going to be maximizing your opportunity to sell those deals.
Yeah, no, that's all great. That's super, super golden information. And I think that that last one, the realtor, is probably the most underrated and undervalued of the 3, right? Like, we just look at them like, oh, you're just like a glorified salesperson for housing, right? Like,
yeah,
they have relationships. They know people. Like, especially if you get a good experienced one. There's some crazy statistic of like how many realtors are licensed realtors and sell under 1 property a year and stuff. Like, okay, whatever. Let's find somebody that's doing like, 50, transactions a year within their, realtor brokerage. But if you find that right person, we've talked about this previously on a couple other episodes recently, actually, that like realtors can bring in some amazing buyers that will just like be repetitive buyers, because a lot of time these buyers, they may be cash buyers, but they still want that realtor to be kind of the go-between person for the relationships themselves, right? So I think that's a key function,
100%. And the best thing about realtors too is realtors bring buyers that pay the big bucks, right?
Yeah.
Because they're used to paying a commission. They're used to, bidding on properties, quote unquote, on the MLS, right? They're used to competing for properties. And who better to have on your list than someone who's willing to pay top dollar?
Yeah, for sure. I think this might be a bonehead question, but I'm 100% sure that somebody's listening right now is thinking this in their mind. And I've never asked this before, never thought about it. In the conversation that we're having, would it be your best advice to get a realtor of your own that can facilitate relationships like that with other realtors too? Or should you be the one that's making those relationships?
You could. It just really depends on the stage of the game that you're at in your business, right? If you're brand new, you got to be out there making those relationships and making those contacts, right? Because that's where you're going to get the most value. You're going to build the deepest relationships, and you're going to be able to sell the most deals, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say you're in a position where you're totally opposite, right? Maybe you're 5-10 years into the game and you have a full team. You have a budget to where you're like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and have this one person oversee realtor relationships. You could totally do that, and that could be beneficial for you, right? But at the end of the day, in the very beginning, you're just starting out doing this yourself. And here's the thing. It doesn't take very long. If you sit there and you focus on adding 5 contacts to your list every single day, and one of them is a realtor, cash buyer, or wholesaler, you will have a massive buyer's list and be able to sell the majority of the deals that you put under contract.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think it goes even beyond that too with relationships as well. I mean, you make relationships with multifamily investors or commercial, because like these people also get the types of deal that you're looking for. They just throw them away. It's no different than a realtor that gets a seller that's a for sale by owner that's like, hey, I want to talk to you, like I want to work with you, but then they're not like the type of person that's really workable with a realtor. So then that realtor throws the lead away. Very similar to that, because then that realtor could send it to their connection with the wholesaler, right? So like on the seller side, but make relationships with just about anybody that's within the real estate space, because you never know who's going to bring you a deal, is kind of like the nutshell of that.
Yeah, and we're talking about adding these realtors to your buyers list, right? So these realtors are going to get wind of what you're doing. They see that you're bringing quality deals to the table. Guess what? There's going to be opportunities, like Josh was just saying, where maybe they don't have they don't want to list the property because the property is just in terrible shape. And so they're going to refer it to you for an exchange or percentage of the fee. And guess what? You get free deals.
Yeah, for sure. I believe that's probably something that you talk about in your coaching program quite a bit. And this is something that I, toyed with when we were back in the day when we were doing the reverse wholesaling and all that stuff before all the, the cold calling, text blasting and stuff like that came around for motivated seller lead marketing. Yeah. But when it comes to touching the buyer's list and going to find the deals for them, how are you juicing that out from the buyers? Are you like, when you make the connection with them, are you basically asking them like, hey, what's the criteria? What are you looking for? And then you go look for that and bring that to the table once you have that? Or like, then the next question would be, how often are you pampering them? Like, are you touching base with those people weekly, monthly? What's kind of like the curation of that relationship from the way that you kind of teach it?
Yeah, great question. So what we do is, in the beginning, we're getting all that criteria from them, right? And then we're putting them on our list. And if when you're first getting started, if your list is really small, then you want to touch base with these people at least once a month, just to be in touch with them, make sure nothing changes. But when you get to a point where we have you have thousands of buyers on your list like we do, right? Really, it comes down to them reaching out to you when you send out deals, because they're eventually going to reach out to you and say, hey, look, I saw that you sent me a property in Clearwater, Florida. I'm not buying over there anymore. Here's my new areas that I'm buying in. And you just develop that open loop with them where they can share that feedback with you, know that you're going to go ahead and update it in your system, right? But in the very beginning, touching base with your buyers, keeping that personal relationships, even reaching out to your buyers when you don't have deals, right? A lot of people are not doing this, and they have a very transactional relationship with their buyers. And it makes it to where that buyer is not going to get too excited to buy properties from you, right? He's going to treat you like a transaction, maybe lowball you on deals. But if you're following up with him, saying, hey, I don't have a deal for you in the territory you're looking in right now, but what can I do for you, right? Have that go-giver mentality, right? Nobody does that. And that's a big way to scale because a lot of people, they say that, wholesaling's oversaturated, but I totally disagree, because only 1% of wholesalers are actually good wholesalers. So if you can build relationships, if you can care about helping people, you can just blow everybody else out of the water.
Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else, well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode. Yeah, when you're investing time into that relationship, and that's why I asked the question, because how often are you curating them? You're going out to coffee with them frequently and that sort of thing. And obviously when you have a smaller buyers list, it's much easier to do that, which that's kind of a conversation for the way that, if you're listening right now, the way that your business is structured, what markets you're in, how many deals you do a year and that sort of thing. But, it's a totally different type of conversation and aura when you are dealing with somebody that you've invested a lot of time into, you've had lunch with them several times, they're an actual friend, they treat you different. And it's it's that sort of thing. If I'm working with somebody that I'm personal friends with, brings me a deal, I'm less likely to lowball them. I still want to make sure it makes sense for me. And that's where you as the wholesaler also needs to make sure it makes sense for the buyer. Yeah. But if you haven't built a relationship with me and it's just transactional, the only thing I'm worried about is the profit that I'm going to make. That's the only thing I'm worried about, the money side of it. But when you start to throw the relationship in, it's emotional. Yeah. No, you go ahead. You're on there.
You were on fire right there. So what I was going to share with you is that there's no emotion there for them to be able to be no, I'm going to give you $30,000 lower than what you're offering me here, right? So there's no friction there because there's no emotional attachment, right? Mm-hmm. But the first, if you're keeping in contact with your buyers and you're John, man, hey, great to talk with you again. How's the baby, right? Or hey, I mentioned you said you were going to go with the family to SeaWorld last week. How did that go? Oh, and great, fantastic, man. Well, hey, I had this opportunity come across my desk, and you were the first one I thought of when I saw it and want to tell you about it. Now isn't a good time, is it? Yeah, it's a good time. Okay, great. And then dive it in. So much different than just calling some guy out of the blue that you talked to 3 months ago and be like, hey, remember we spoke not too long ago, maybe 3 months ago. Who are you? Like, it's a different conversation flow, and you get a different end result too.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, I want to kind of switch gears going into the motivated seller lead marketing side of things, but it's still in relation to like building relationships and that sort of thing. So I know one of the things you talk about is cold calling quite often, and even on your one sheet, it says how it's the best way to get your first deal. But I think the big part that a lot of, and you probably deal with this a lot, you get pushback from people that you're training, and they say like, I just don't feel comfortable cold calling people and compromising their personal cell phones and, talking to them, and they're like, cursing at me and hanging up and telling me to take them off the list and that sort of thing. People get uncomfortable with that. And an experienced real estate investor, if you're listening right now and you do, 5-10 deals a month or something like that, you probably had that stage, but you're not experiencing that anymore. But I'm curious to see, like, first of all, why do you believe cold calling is the best way to get that first deal? And then secondly, I want to start going into the cold calling strategies that you implement for the businesses and how to make it the most efficient that it possibly can be. And in 2024, where regulations around cold calling are absolutely crazy.
Yeah. No, awesome. Great question. So the reason why I feel like cold calling is the absolute best way to start is because it puts you in direct contact with sellers quickly, faster than any other marketing channel that you can do, right? Number one. Number two, it's very low overhead. Like, very few people getting in cannot afford to cold call, as opposed to someone coming in and being like, man, I can't afford to send a huge direct mail campaign, or I can't do a pay-per-click campaign or SEO or what, all these other strategies, right? So it's a very low risk strategy too, because let's be honest, when most people start out, they suck on the phone. They are not good, right? And so why not go through the crucible, right? Like, make those calls, get through all those no's, sharpen your skills. And if you can get good at that and you can do deals that way, man, you're going to have a much higher return on your marketing investment when you start doing these higher dollar per lead marketing channels, right? So 90 days of cold calling will give you a 10-year education in sales and cold calls, right? So, but going to the mindset piece, right? Because you were talking about how not many people want to cold call in the beginning because they're kind of hesitant about it. Here's the thing. A lot of people are worried about the wrong thing, right? They're worried that the person's going to curse them out. They're going to think they're a newbie. They're going to say this, that, or the other. Here's the thing. Or even worse, they're going to mess up, right? So here's the thing. It does not matter if you mess up. Who cares, right? Because you're not going to see these people at the grocery store.
Right.
It's not like you're going to sit there picking on apples and they're going to be like, you're the guy who called me and messed up and didn't do anything. Not going to happen, right? So who cares, right? So that's what I tell people when they get started. So, and the biggest thing is when you're sitting down to cold call is you want to minimize the time between thinking about needing to make that call and actually picking up the phone to make that call, because that buffer time, if the longer you have that period in between thinking about making the call and making the call, the more it gives your mind the opportunity to come up with all the things that could go wrong, right? You're a newbie. What if they call you out on that? What if they know you've never done a deal before, right? You're calling them, telling them you're going to make an offer. You have no cash. How are you going to do that, right? So like all these limiting beliefs like come up in their mind. But what I found is if they really limit that time between thinking about making the call and making the call, like it prevents that from happening, and they can go into that first call with confidence. Even if they mess up, that's a win. Get that first one out of the way. Cool. You got it. Move on to the next one.
That's good. No, that's a really, really good tip for people that have never done cold calling before, or maybe they're still kind of like hesitant on it.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense. The more time that you have to think about it, the more excuses you're going to make. And trust your training and your instincts, right? Like just dial the phone and just keep it going. Mm-hmm. So what type of conversation? So like somebody that's listening, that's a little bit on the newer side, somebody's, this starts to go into a little bit of the sales process, right? Like when you're cold calling somebody. And even, by the way, if you're listening and you're not a newbie, you do deals, still listen up, because there might be some nugget that you hear today that could change and innovate the entire way that you do cold calling. So just pay attention. No, shut this off. But Chris, for somebody that's never done it before, they're starting to get into it, what type of conversations are you having as soon as somebody picks up that phone? Like, what are some of the first words that are coming out of your mouth? in order to hook them, to get them interested in the conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you have 7 seconds to capture someone's attention, right? And in that 7 seconds, you need to state who you are, why you're calling, and how you can help them. Yeah. And if you don't get to that in the first 7 seconds, they're going to hang up on you, right? So what we do is we sound like the anti-professional, right? We want to be like the guy next door, and even go to the lengths of saying like, hey, I hope I have the right phone number, and maybe like, paste that out a bit. So you're like, not like, hey, I hope I have the right phone number. Like, hey, I hope I have the right phone number. Like almost like you're kind of hesitant, nervous, right? Because
like you're a human being
right now.
You're not right. You're not reading off a script.
Right. You're not reading off script. Yeah. And then number 2, people don't like Big Brother, knowing that like you like they don't want to know that you picked up the phone, you knew that you had the right phone number, and you got that somehow. Then they're thinking like, well, did you get my phone number, right?
That's good.
Like, it puts that distrust, like that wall, it like throws it way up, right? So we say, hey, help with the right phone number. Is this John? And I'm like, yeah, this is John. Who's this? Well, hey, John, you don't know me. And I realize I'm calling you completely out of the blue, or I realize you don't know me, but I'm a local home buyer in the area and came across your property, great property out there, and really just wanted to see if you consider a cash offer on it. And then from there, he's going to be like, yes or no. If he says yes, great. So let me just share with you a little bit about how we do things here, right? So what we do is we pay cash. We cover all the closing costs. There's no fees or anything like that. And the best part is we'll take the property as is conditioned. So for an offer like that, how much would you take? And then we let him tell us the number. Most cases, they don't. They're like, hey, you called me. Why don't you tell me what you're going to offer, right? So we say, okay, well, most sellers, they have like a ballpark figure in the back of their mind, how much they're thinking of, that if they got this number they'd sell today, you wouldn't have a figure like that, would you? And then they're going to be like, well, maybe, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Do you have like a magic number that you're thinking of that if you got it, you sell today? So you ask a couple of different ways. And then if he does it, then from there you say, okay, great. Yeah, how to make an offer. Just need to know a little bit more about the property. Now, the most important thing to do is get the 4 pillars of motivation. Okay. So the 4 pillars of motivation is you want to get the price. You want to find out the timeline, how soon they're looking to sell. You want to find out the motivation, right? So their burning why behind needing to sell that property. And that's where you want to spend the most of your time, right? This is where people spend the least amount of their time, right? And it's usually not the first thing they tell you. It's usually it's usually their why behind the why, right?
Sure.
So when they say, oh, I'm looking to move up north. Oh, really? Tell me about that. What's got you wanting to move up north? And then they'll say, well, truth is I'm downsizing and I want to move in with the kids and I want to sell the house, cash out my retirement. Boom, there's the motivation, right? But if you would have just taken it for face value and just said, oh, you're moving up north? Okay. Because you told me, Mr. Seller, you wanted to move up north. And so it's not going to hit as hard as if you bring up the situation if they turn down your offer, right? And then lastly, the condition of the property. So what we want to find out on the condition is if they've remodeled the house in the last 5 years. And then I'd like to find out the age of the 4 big ticket items. So the roof, the plumbing or septic, electrical, and the roof, AC, plumbing, and electrical, or septic, right? Those are the main things we want to find out. And if if they've remodeled that house in the last 5 years and they say no, and then they tell you the condition of those other things, you have everything you need to be able to make a cash offer to that seller.
Yeah, for sure. That's huge. I think like going through those progressions and those steps, first of all, that'll make people feel more comfortable. Yeah. And here's the thing too, like I think like the truth in like cold calling too is just keep it conversational. Like don't sound like a robot. Don't sound like a telemarketer. Yeah. Like I got tricked today. Like I have the area code that I live in is 219, and normally telemarketers are calling you from like a completely different area code. Yeah. And for the first time, like I'm very adamant about not answering telemarketer calls. And like iPhones now say like spam risk and that sort of thing. Yeah. And somebody got me and I was like, hello. And I was actually expecting a call from somebody in Crown Point, which is a 219 number. Yeah. And I said, hello. And then it stopped for 2 seconds. And my first thought was, damn, they got me. Sure enough, the guy's like, sir, I'm from, I was like, so you got, that obvious. And just like you said, it was 7 seconds. It took me like 4 seconds to realize that they got me. Yeah. So if you keep things conversational, not saying like telemarketers doing the right thing or the wrong thing, but if you keep things conversational, it's just, it makes things go over so much smoother. That goes back to the relationship part of what we were talking about earlier.
100%.
And it helps it a whole lot more throughout the process of them actually, first of all, potentially working with you, but then the entirety of the service that you're offering to them to buy their house. So
absolutely,
it's huge.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, good telemarketers will pick an area code to call you that's based around where you are, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's where it's good to have a dialer that is
that's it. Yes.
to date on those things, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be using your personal cell phone to cold call because you don't want to be showing up scam likely to your parents or your family, right? So using a dialer, we use Batch Dialer, which is amazing. And it has like a live phone number monitoring or reputation monitoring. And so that way you're always calling on clean phone numbers, which is huge.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this has been such a great conversation, man. I wish we had more time, but we're approaching the end of our rope here. But guys, we're gonna mention a few things that you can connect with Chris on later on, and Chris is going to be starting to put out some new content soon. Maybe by the time that this episode goes out, you're going to have your stuff going out, so that's super cool. So we'll make sure that we link all that down in the description below. But Chris, I appreciate all the value that you brought today, man. A lot of like very actionable things that, like, if you're listening right now, I hope you've taken notes and that you're going to actually like implement and do. And once again, like, this show is for, you know, not just beginners, not just intermediates, not just experts and advanced and, you know, people that are doing 400 deals a year. This is for everybody that's in that ballpark. Even if you have been cold calling 1,000 times a week, like, there's still something that you could take away from this. So Chris, for Virtual Wholesaling Made Simple, explain just like 60 seconds, explain the program real briefly, how people can learn more about it and get connected.
Yeah, sure. So basically, you know, I show new wholesalers how to wholesale houses from home anywhere in the country. Doesn't matter if they have a full-time job, no team, and no experience, and less than $1,000 a month in marketing, right? And so if you'd like to learn more about that, you can join my free Facebook group, Virtual Wholesaling Made Simple. You can find it on Facebook, and there's a ton of content in there. We do free lives every single week, and you can learn a little bit more about what it would look like to work with me. And then outside of that, I actually have a free gift for your audience here. If you guys would like access to my 5 baby steps to wholesaling houses from home mind map, then just go ahead and text baby steps to 813-560-8319. Again, that's baby steps. Text that to 813-560-8319. And I'll make sure you get our entire playbook for wholesaling houses from home, so you can have like a 30,000 foot view of how we do it and what we do.
Awesome. Dude, that's much appreciated. Guys, we're going to have that down in the description below in case you're driving right now and you're not able to access, texting it and you want to look it up later. Check it out down in the description below. We'll also have the link to the Facebook group there so that you can check that out and go directly there. You're not having to fumble around on Facebook looking for it, that sort of thing. But guys, definitely get connected with Chris. Chris, I appreciate your time, man. This has been such a great episode and look forward to having you back again soon.
Awesome, Josh. It was a ton of fun and happy to be here. And I'll look forward to connecting with you again soon here too.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening today. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, do me a huge favor. And you can continue listening to this episode, but go on over to the homepage of this podcast and make sure to leave a review. I would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts about this. I've had a few people tag me up on Facebook or even send me direct messages and say, like, Josh, I listened to this episode and I got a lot of value out of that. Keep sending that my way because I love hearing that. It gives me more motivation to continue to put this content out for you guys, and I love doing it. But it also gives ideas for getting guests on the show because maybe you got something specific out of something that, maybe we need more of. So send that stuff over to me. But you can also go check this episode out on YouTube as well if you prefer the video version. We're putting out a lot of good content there as well. So thank you guys so much for listening and joining in today, and we will catch you on the next one. See you later.